Our scripture this morning comes from Jeremiah 17, 9 through 10. The heart is deceptive more than anything else, and desperately sick. Who can know it? I, the Lord, search the heart. I test the mind, even to give every person according to his ways, according to the fruit of his longings. This is, as you can see at the top of your page, part 1. Oh dear. That itself is simply an act of faith, is it not? Yes, it is. But we will be looking mainly at the first portion of verse 9 today. The heart is deceptive more than anything else. And we're going to start simply by reminding ourselves, what do we mean in Scripture when we read or when we say heart? Two basic aspects. The first is the heart is the place where perception takes place. It's not simply where you feel things as it is in our culture. There are oftentimes ideas and thoughts associated with the heart, and a thought isn't an emotion. We in our society tend to just blend those together so that there's no difference. But that's not the case here, and it is perception, not analytical thought, not logical deduction, but perception. In the New Testament, the same idea is expressed by the Greek word mind that we translate mind. It's nous. And that also is not discursive reasoning. It's the capacity to perceive life as it really is. That's associated with the heart in Scripture. The second aspect regarding the heart is that the heart is the place of your core longing, your deepest longing. The longing that really is the cry of your true self. It's very important to put those things together. Scripture does, as we'll see in a bit. But it is the place of your core longing, your deepest longing, the one that is the cry of who you really are. Of course, these two aspects go together, because in order to fulfill your longing, you must be able to perceive the longing itself and what satisfies it. So perception and longing are bound together, and they both are functions of the heart. So let's look a little bit further now into the sentence, deceptive more than anything else. I don't know if you caught it, but there was an inflective way in which I read that I wanted you to get, because we don't often think that that's what's going on in the Scripture. So in today's way of speaking, we would probably start verse 9 with these words. We would probably say, well, more than anything else, the heart is deceptive. There's a contrast being drawn there. We're not saying, let me tell you, you think about all the deceptive things you can think of, and that heart beats every one of them. That's not what the meaning is. The meaning is, the real issue with the heart is deception. It's not that the heart is evil. It's not that the heart is bad. It's not that the heart is malevolently crafty. The real issue is it's deceptive. And it's deceptive because it is deceived. It is deceptive precisely because it is deceived. It isn't evil, it's deceived. The Septuagint reading of this, the Septuagint is simply the Greek translation of the Old Testament. The Septuagint reading of verse 9 is interesting. It says the heart is deep more than anything else. And so is the person. And who can know him? The heart is deep more than anything else. And so is the person. And who can know him? What do you think it means to say that the heart is deep more than anything else?
The heart is veiled.
Okay, part of it means that the heart is veiled. Yes.
There's so many layers.
Yes. Yeah, there's so many layers. The comparative, deeper, brings out this idea that it's so deep you can't see the bottom. You can't get to the bottom of it, which means you don't know what's at the bottom. In other words, you can't get to your deepest longing because you can't see it. Consequently, you don't know your core longing. You only know the desires that are closer to the surface, the ones you can access. But while they may be what you want, they are not what you want most. That's what's at the bottom. That's the core. Yes?
So the usual rendering you hear of this verse is the heart is desperately wicked, is how it starts. So I'm wondering if the reason maybe that came to be what you hear is if we really only can see the desires that are closest, those are not always really reflective of good desires. And
True.
so they connect
True.
in that way.
Yes.
But really it's not our deepest
Right.
longing. Because I knew about the Septuagint. Okay, how do we get that how are those transitions so incredibly different?
Yes. Yeah. We're going to blend them in the next question, I think. Yeah. And so that'll be helpful in that. Yes.
You're wondering how the definitions are different? Like if I assume I know what you're asking, which I don't always with what people say, is what language it was written in.
Well, yes and no. We're not going to get into this today. We probably will get into it some next week. There's a reason why Greek has person, and there's a reason why there's deep there. But not today. Yeah.
Is this the same scripture, or is it another one that says the heart is deceitful?
Yes.
This is it.
This is it.
Huh.
And that's why we started. The heart is deceptive. But the question that I tried to say real quickly, is that the reason it's deceptive is because it is deceived. We're not there yet. Let's keep moving. So how would you put the Septuagint reading together with the Hebrew reading of this verse?
Well, I'm struggling with that because somebody around here has said that we always have to interpret everything Christologically.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know who that would be, but I can't help but bring into that part where Jesus announces his public ministry, refers to it in Isaiah. I have come to heal the brokenhearted. So like that idea, well, if the heart's broken, we can talk about all the ways, but this is kind of a new manifestation of that for me. It's like it was intended to do one thing, but it's not.
Correct.
It's broken in that way, and these two aspects that kind of allude to this.
Yes.
It was intended for you to help see life as it really is and live
Correct.
life really is, but it is unable to do that without Jesus.
Correct. And that's what we'll get to a lot, the Christological putting together. We'll get to that a little bit today, but that's the focus of the third in this series. But you're heading in the right direction. Yes. So maybe think about it like this. The true longing of the heart is buried so deeply under deception that we cannot know it.
Repeat that.
Yep. The true longing of the heart is buried so deeply under deception that we cannot know it. So we mistake the deception for the truth. In the same way that we mistake desires that are closer to the surface that we can access as what is our deepest longing, when they are not.
It's like a really bad translator, essentially.
Yeah, it's kind of like you are put into a room full of Russians, but what you know is French.
I know neither.
Body language.
So I'd be in real trouble.
Yes. And so would we if we're listening to you, wouldn't we?
Right.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point. Yeah. So I want us to notice something that James tells us. Look at on the outline there. I have the normal way that James 1:14 is translated. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. But if you were to be more literal in the way that is, it would read like this. But each one is tempted when his own desires are led astray and enticed. That's really something different, isn't it?
It's active versus passive.
Yes. Yes.
Like, who's doing the acting?
Yes. Something is enticing your desires. It's not that your desires are leading you astray. Your desires have been led astray, and that's why they lead you astray. Okay? Any comment on that, or anybody just want to shake your head and get no? Okay. So the next question: what is the significance of the Septuagint reading that as the heart is deep, so too is the person?
Does it at all suggest that to understand a person, you have to understand the heart?
Sure, those two things are wrapped up together. Yeah.
That's our true.
Go ahead.
That's our true self, true identity.
True self, true identity. Yes. 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 Kara?
I was just going to say, if our heart is so deep, I lost what I was thinking. Hold on. So too is if we can't see the deepest longing of ourselves, we don't know who our true person is.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yes. Yes.
Will we ever know our deepest longing, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We can begin to know it now, and we should. And we'll get to that. So, like our longing, who we really are is buried deep under deception. What characterizes the reality of our longing characterizes the reality of our person. And because we don't know our deepest longing, we don't really know who we are as a person. And since our deepest longing is an expression, is the cry of who we really are, our own personhood is hidden from us. And that's why we'll say silly things like, well, I'm just the kind of person, and then we'll describe something that has nothing to do with Jesus.
Just being honest.
Or I'm just being honest, yes. Yes. And see, what we've done is we have confused what is close to the surface and what is deceived as what I am at the root, the core of who I am. And those are not the same thing at all. And so Proverbs 27:19 has this wonderful phrase, as in water, face reflects face, so a person's heart reveals the person.
Is that on here?
It is.
I don't have it.
You sure? Look under the question.
Nope.
What's that scripture again?
Would you say
I
what
don't
the
know
verse
why.
is?
Here it is, Proverbs 27:19. As in water, face reflects face, So a person's heart reveals the person.
Thank you.
Because your deepest longing is the cry of who you really are, there is this connection between who you are and what is your longing. Do you see that? Does that make sense? So let's move ahead to Colossians 3, 1-4. Since then, you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Contemplate the things above, not the things on earth, for you died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. Whenever Christ, our life, is manifested, then you also will be manifested with him in glory. So given the answer to the previous question, how are these verses from Colossians helpful to us? And this begins to get at what you were asking, right?
Yeah, this is like the ultimate promise, really, to be risen with Christ in glory. I mean, what could possibly be better than that?
Yes, it certainly addresses that, but notice the whenever could mean now as well.
True.
The only way we know ourselves is through Christ.
Exactly.
That's how we get at the answer.
That's how we get at the answer. Jesus is our humanity. What's at the core of who we are? Look at Jesus. That's where you see it manifested. If you want to know what you're like at the core, you look at Jesus. If you want to know what your personhood is like at the core, you look at Jesus. And when you see it manifested in Jesus in your life, then who you are is being manifested in that. And it's why Jesus is so essential, not just as the person who gives us rules to live by, but as the revelation of what it means to be human. There are so many times that we make Jesus superfluous to our day-to-day life. Well, sure, Jesus could do it, and I'll do that when I'm in heaven. Well, what about now? I got these feelings now. I got these longings now. I got these desires now. What do I do with those? Well, first of all, you recognize that you're not even near the bottom of who you are. Who you are is a lot deeper than that nonsense you're talking about right now. And if you would open to this, the truth is, if you look at Jesus, you see what your core is like. You see your longing. And you see how only the way in which Jesus lives out that core humanity is the way that my humanity is also fulfilled and lived truly. And I don't wait till the sweet by and by to start that. I do it now. It may be imperfectly, and it will be. Because I'm so darn deceived by so much. But to the measure that I look to Jesus and perceive in him my humanity, then I am being revealed with Jesus. Jesus is revealing me.
It'll be like yesterday going to McDonald's, and that woman at the taking my order was rude and just dismissive and wouldn't let me finish. And I'm
sorry, I don't have time for this.
And I got mad, but I knew that wasn't who I really was, and that's not how I wanted to act towards her when I got up to the window. So, I was polite and I said, "This is just what I wanted to finish saying," and then I asked my question, and I didn't, I wasn't rude to her, didn't yell at her, because I knew that that's not how I wanted to act. That wasn't the longing I was
Right.
actually needing.
Right. Notice how there's a connection here between being a person of substance and being insubstantial. Our false self is so insubstantial, anything sets it off. When you are a person of substance, things don't set you off in the same way. You can take being insulted, you can take being overlooked because you are so substantial, you don't require what they offer you. That's how substantial you are. It is a revelation to us how insubstantial our false self is, and our surface level longings are, that they are so easily derailed. And why in the world would we trust ourselves to what can be so easily derailed? Why would we trust that for our goodness and our happiness and our joy? It's nonsense. But that's part of the deception. So what we've mainly been talking about is the second aspect of the heart in our discussion. That's the number 2 that we began with. How does our discussion today impact the first aspect of the heart as well, which is our perception?
Jesus has to be the framework through which we perceive life as it really is.
Exactly.
We cannot, quote unquote, lean on our own understanding.
Yes. Has to be. Has to be. And the depth of our deception is also the depth to which our perception is deceived. So we may think we know exactly what's going on, but maybe not so much. Now we might, but we also, I think that this is where a sense of humility has to come into play. We have to realize that I walk into any situation with a depth of deception that I am unaware of its depth. There is an already formed false self that is just absolutely convinced that how it sees reality is reality. And I can't escape that. What I need is what Don was saying. I need to look at Jesus because Jesus is the ground of my perception. Jesus is the light in which I see things as they really are, which I can perceive things as they really are. That doesn't mean I still don't feel the things of the false self. Listen, I don't know how to say this any more clearly, or otherwise I would. We are not trying to pacify the false self. Ever. It's false. We're not trying to improve the false self. Ever. It's false. So it isn't a matter of rehabilitating a false self. It's the issue of I will not identify with that because I know there's something deeper. That who I am is deeper than this surface level stuff. Who I am is who I am with Jesus. And when Jesus is manifested in my life, then who I am is manifested as well. So right in the midst of being at a drive-through window, when someone is being disrespectful to you, you're going to feel like, I need to put this person in their place. But I'm going to be obedient to Jesus. Not because I have to, because he'll put me in hell if I don't, but because I know his word is calling me into being as who I really am. His word is the light of my perception. And so I will follow that instead of my false self. And there are too many times when we think that, well, if I'm really following Jesus, I don't have a false self. You will till you die. You will be deceived until you die. Not about everything, not about Not all the time, but you will be. This is why we are not already who we are. This is why we are becoming who we are. And we become who we are as we are accustomed more and more by the Spirit to life in communion with God. Because that's when we're being shaped more and more according to the Christ in us instead of the false self. Is that clear?
Yes.
Well then, stop it! Just stop it.
Just stop it.
That's right, just stop.
Yes, Bob Newhart.
Yes, just stop it.
Just stop it.
That's right. So how does our scripture this morning affect the way you see yourself and other people?
One of the most challenging ones is looking at other people as being worthy of sacrificing yourself for. Probably the one I struggle with the most. But another one that can be fun a lot of times is, whenever you meet someone for the first time, you're generally meeting their false self. And, being as a guy who I meet a lot of strange people, and especially in job interviews, it's one of the ways you get their most false version of themselves constantly, right? That happens dozens of times a month for me.
Yes.
And I've gotten pretty good at putting people at ease and moving past that. And then just the relief that occurs. Don't we all have, and part of that deepest longing is just to be known and accepted for who we are, even if we don't truly know who we are, and even if, right, there's all that fig leaf, shame, fear stuff going on that produces that false self, and we hide and we pose and we do all this kind of stuff so that we're not discovered. But if we can encounter people that can help us move past that, just how good and beautiful that is.
Yes.
So just seeing that and not holding that against people. So if they are rude to you or they're evasive or whatever, just helping move past that. So that can be a good way, right?
Yes.
That we can live that out.
Yes. Yes.
For me, there's a lot of pondering that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And even thinking through, like I said, maybe counting to 5 before you give an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Not speaking every thought that goes through your head, but what I found most challenging was the opening verse, which in many ways has been taught to us under deception.
Yes.
So you're trying to uncover a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out what is actually what you take home and what you leave behind.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Very much so. It's a shame that we've been brought up with your heart's just desperately wicked. And it's a shame, too, that in response to that, we simply start with the premise your heart's really good and what you feel from your heart is really good. No, that's not true either. Because the issue is your heart is deceived and you don't know what's good and what isn't. The only way you know what's good is to look at Jesus. And whatever in your heart that lines up with Jesus, okay, that's what I'll run with. But you can't simply start with the notion that, there's this good heart, and the heart is good, but you don't know what that means. You have no way of knowing what that is because you can't see to the bottom of the heart where the good is. You can't see to the bottom of the heart where the person is. You need someone to show that to you. And it's not just, well, I feel very altruistic, so I've got a good heart. No. Is altruism not good then, Rick? Is that what you're saying? Altruism's not? I'm saying, how do you measure that? Why have you deigned that altruism is good? If you didn't start it with Jesus and define your altruism by Jesus, then altruism isn't the good. It may be better than something else, but it's not the good. So because we've been raised in this environment of this binary option, either your heart is good or it's bad, we don't know how to think about, well, where does deception enter into that? And where does woundedness enter into that? Because we're going to look at the heart's also desperately sick. See, there's other factors. The simplistic notion of it's just bad or it's just good is that, simplistic. It's not realistic. And I think that there is benefit to recognize, and this is part of my answer to this last question. I think there's benefit to recognizing that I'm always going to be deceived at some point. Always. I may always be in the process of being accustomed to life in communion, but I'm not there yet. It's like Paul in Philippians, when he says, not that I have achieved that or arrived yet, but here's what I do. I don't pay attention to what went on behind, and I just look to Jesus. That's what I do. You can do that when you understand what we're talking about this morning. And it's one of the reasons that I love this little fellowship. Because I think we make space for people's false selves here, without simply shunning them because they have a false self. Because each one of us has one too. And each one of us knows we're not all that. And so we don't demand that somebody else be. And we don't simply describe people by what we know isn't right about them. Oh yeah, that's so-and-so. Well, they're just this way. That's not how we think. We say, well, yeah, that's true about them, but they're also this. And that's when we're actually dealing with reality. And that's when we're actually loving people. Because we recognize that as deeply deceived as they are, so am I. So am I. I'm not farther up the ladder than they are. And I love that. And I think it gives people freedom, not to be abrasive, but freedom to know they are accepted and they are loved, even though they are not perfect, and we don't ever expect that they will be. Their perfection is not the basis of our care for them. Now, that's a church. Any closing comments or questions?
I was just going to say, for me, it's like when someone tells you something is not good or someone's not good, something's not good, you try to make it better. It's what we've been taught. You see something not good, you try to make it better.
Yeah.
Try to fix it.
Yeah.
And so there's really no ever fixing it, and so that's the push and pull you have in your being. That's like, well, there is no fix it except for Jesus, and unless you focus on that, you're never ever going to fix anything to make it better, or say anything about something to make it better, because it's just not going to ever happen. And so I get that conflict because I'm a misfixit. I like to make things better for people and others, and you can just have an anxiety attack because it's like never going to happen.
Right.
So for me, I have to really back up and say, Jesus is here. What would he think about this? I mean, I do it all the time. It's like, okay, well, it's got to be Jesus. So
yes, yeah. This modern notion of we're to be always progressing, always getting
bigger,
better,
best. Yeah.
is one of the chief deceptions that cripples us.
Yeah, it's in the whole world. Yeah.
We're always trying to be better.
Bigger, better, best.
You can't make yourself better.
Nope.
You simply can't. And you can't use Jesus to get better either. It's just not the way it works.
Yeah, there was so many important points today that were like aha moments. But one of them was, and I wrote it down, I cannot improve my full self.
Yes.
Say that again, Karen.
Right. Yeah.
Many of the points today were great, but the one that I had to write down was, I cannot improve my false self.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I cannot.
Polishing that statue.
That's
That's your false self.
That's a key
Exactly.
thing.
How many times
That's
I try, well,
right.
I'll just, you know,
Yeah.
it
That's right.
it's on me, and
You can't.
I can't.
Right. Right.
I don't know how much I think I can.
Yeah.
Deception.
That's a relief, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why would you want to after you know that?
Right.
Yeah.
Can't unsee that.
Well, we just don't have the framework usually to approach this. And that's what Scripture wants to give to us, is the framework to approach this. Well, in just a moment, we're going to be having communion. So, we share a life with Jesus, which means we actually share in His life. There's not this third life. We share one with Jesus. We share His life with Him. His life is the true humanity that informs us about our true humanity. Reflect on that for a bit, and then come and take from the bread and the cup.